As I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, today we celebrate not only the second Sunday in Easter and in the octave of Easter, but also Divine Mercy Sunday. The whole feast of Divine Mercy Sunday grew out of the revelations to a quiet little nun in Poland named Sister Faustina. Sister Faustina grew up as one of 10 children. It was a very poor family. She only was able to go to school through the 3rd grade, but she longed to become a nun. She went to various convents and finally was accepted by a convent and made her professions. When she was in the convent in 1931, shortly after the beginning of the Great Depression, she had a vision of Christ who told her, as he appeared in the image in this picture, to have someone paint the picture with one hand raised in blessing and the other hand pointing to his Sacred Heart, from which 2 rays of light were coming forth, one red representing the blood of Christ and the pale one representing the waters of baptism that wash us free of sin, the waters that we were sprinkled with this morning. And at the bottom of the picture, he said to put the words, "Jesus, I trust in you." That message of divine mercy is that the mercy of God is unbelievable. It's broader than anything we can ever begin to imagine. The message that she got through Christ for us, especially on this Divine Mercy Sunday, but every day of our lives, is really threefold. To seek the mercy of God with all our heart, to ask his forgiveness for the things we've done wrong. Secondly, to accept and trust in that mercy, that there's nothing that God can't forgive. The greatest sin of Judas was not necessarily betraying Jesus, but not trusting that he could forgive him if he turned to him, just as Peter turned to Jesus as he denied him 3 times. And the third thing is to extend that mercy to others. First reading talks about how the apostles and all of the followers of Jesus brought their gifts and their goods together. Some of them sold everything they had and gave it so they could live in community. It was an act of mercy to those who wanted to follow Jesus but couldn't afford to leave their jobs and their lives behind. It was a true act of loving kindness and mercy. Mercy is not always easy. Forgiveness is not always easy for us to grant, but that's part of what God wanted us to do and still wants us to do. One of the greatest acts of mercy, I think, is a story that I heard that occurred in World War II. St. Faustina died in 1938, right before the beginning of World War II, and that message of mercy was to be so deeply needed during those times, not just during the war, but after the war. There was a young man who grew up, his name was Franz Stingler in Germany. And he loved to fly. He and his older brother was, I think, 4 years older than him, loved everything about flying. As a matter of fact, when they were younger, they used to fly in gliders. As he grew up, he became a pilot for Lufthansa airline. When the war broke out, both he and his brother went into the service, and his brother became an airplane pilot, a fighter pilot, and he became an instructor of other pilots because he already knew how to fly. Shortly after the war began, his brother was killed in combat, and he took to the skies. He became a fighter pilot himself and shot down a number of bombers. Well, one day in 1943, there was another young man, a young pilot, on his first mission, flying a B-17 bomber into Germany. His name, of all things, was Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown was only 21 years old, but he lied to the other people in his crew and told them he was 25 so that they would have more faith in him, that he was older and more mature. And as they flew on their bombing mission, everything looked like it was going okay until the skies just lit up with bullets and tracers. And the planes, many of them were shot down right then and there. And his plane was just really rattled with gunfire. The side of the plane was just torn open. You could actually see inside. His tail gunner was slumped over the tail gun, bleeding. He was killed. And his plane was so severely damaged he could barely fly it. And he dropped down way below where the rest of the bombers were, beyond the protection of anyone else. When he looked out the window of his bomber, he saw a German Messerschmitt airplane flown by none other than Franz. Franz looked at him and was about to pull the trigger, and he thought about something that he was told by his squadron leader when he was in training to be a fighter pilot. He said, the decisions you make during war have to be decisions you can live with after the war is over. And he thought about his brother. But instead of being angry that his brother was killed by an American and wanting to seek revenge, he thought to himself, these people are helpless. Only one of their 11 guns on the bomber were operating at all. And as he looked inside the side of the airplane, he saw them trying to minister to their comrades, their teammates who were bruised and bleeding, trying to keep them alive desperately as the captain was fighting to keep the airplane still in the air. And he looked at them and thought, what if someone had mercy on my brother? He would still be alive today. So he took his finger off the trigger and put it on his rosaries. And not only did he not shoot the plane down, but he escorted them all the way to the edge of the North Sea. And as he peeled away, he saluted them and flew off into the distance. That plane limped its way home and almost had the ditch in the ocean, but they saw it in the coast of England and landed. And Charlie Brown lived to see another day. Years later, he tried for decades to try and find this German pilot who had saved him, and lo and behold, he received a letter after 40-some years that he was the pilot. Franz got a hold of him. And in 1990, they met one another. And Franz found the brother that he had lost. He lived because of Franz's mercy, a mercy that God wants us to extend to each other every day of our lives, even when we're hurt, even when we're angry, to just extend that mercy to others, trusting that if we can give mercy to others, that God waits to give mercy to each and every one of us. Let the church say amen.